Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Hunter, and I'm the Senior Minister at the Center for Spiritual Living Victoria. So, welcome to the CSL Victoria Online. It's wonderful to have you here with us right now. As I record this, it is Sunday afternoon, and we've had our service today. And one of the things that sometimes happens to me, as I said to my group this morning, is that as I'm on my way to the center, something in me just says, you're not going to give that talk that you thought you were going to give today. And that happened to me as I was driving in today. And one of the things about that is that I kept trying to resurrect what it was I was going to talk about. And it just was not coming. And so I thought, well, I know enough to trust that when that happens, there is something else that's wanting to be said through me. It's a very long way of saying that. Not sure what's going to come out of my mouth right now, but I am recording this, and I trust that it's a message that we all need to hear, myself included. Anyway, it's lovely to have you here. So the topic today is harness your power, or harness the power. And one thing I do have is a quote that I was going to begin my talk with today, and I did. And it's by Henry David Thoreau. And he wrote, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." So what does that mean anyway? It means that, when we follow our passion, when we follow our dreams, when we stay focused upon them, when we live with the confidence of this power that we have within, when we harness it, and when we don't take our eyes off it, when we don't start to think that it can't happen, it's not possible, then our wildest dreams can come true. And so today, some way or another, I'm talking about harnessing the power. And the thing is that it requires us to go deep, really deep. And I'm reminded of a talk I gave a while ago about priming the pump, remembering my grandmother's well when I was a child. And she had a pump that with the old pump handle, she'd go out and pump the water. And every once in a while, there would be nothing but air that would come. And so then she knew she had to prime the pump. She had to get water from the reservoir and pour it in. And then it would just start the flow of water again. And I remember thinking, a few months ago, that is so much like our spiritual nature. If we are not doing spiritual practice, if we're not meditating, not praying, if we're just going along thinking, oh, I don't need to worry about it, God's in charge, and God is in charge, but we do direct that charge. We direct whatever it is with our thoughts. So when we do that, it's kind of like, we've lost our connection, and we've lost that deep connection to God, power, intelligence, source, whatever it is that you want to call it. And that doesn't work for any of us. What we need to do is to be in conscious connection with the divine, and no more so than right this minute. If we have been neglecting our spiritual practice in any way, then it's really time to get connected, because this world needs you. This world needs all of us right now, because we're going through some perilous times. Now, when I mentioned the quote of Thoreau, I was thinking that, Thoreau lived or did a lot of his work during the 1830s and 1840s in the United States. And at that time, there was a kind of American Renaissance, although we don't hear those words spoken. But he and his colleagues were looking at life in a different way from the way people had in the past. And that was during the time of Emerson and Hawthorne and Walt Whitman, the transcendentalists. And of course, what was happening during that time is they were questioning the religion that they'd been brought up with, the religion that was all around them. They were coming to recognize that there was something much more powerful than anything that they had been taught when they were children, or anything that they were taught when they went to Sunday school or to other churches. It was one could call it original thought, new thought. We call it new thought today, although it is ancient wisdom. But they were really focusing upon the power within and focusing upon everything that they could do with that power. And what was interesting during those times is that in their focus upon what it is that we teach today in our centers, um, that also it was about activism. It was about looking at what was going on in the world around them and not ignoring it, not just, sitting under the Bodhi tree or on a mountaintop and meditating. It was about taking some action. It was about being conscious of what was going on in their world, in the world around them, and what was it that they could do. And they became advocates for the working people to get them better working conditions, and for education for all, and for human rights, um, and for women's rights. They advocated for women to have the vote and for women to be more empowered than they were at the time. It still took a long time for women to get the vote. But the thing is that there was this group of people who understood that God is within each and every one of us, and that we have the power to change our lives with our thinking, and to change our lives when we hold on to those precious thoughts. And I was thinking how important this is, because it was Neville who said we are the heart and soul of God. Each one of us, the heart and soul of God. And so we need to recover our passion, the passion of our lost youth, one might say. Um, this morning I was talking about how when we're little children, we believe that everything is possible. And I was using an example of my granddaughter, Sadie, who is now grown and is a filmmaker. But when she was a little girl, she was a beautiful ballerina. And she auditioned for the Zurich Ballet. The family lived in Switzerland at that point. And she was told that she could never be a great ballerina because she didn't have the feet or the hips to be a ballerina. And I remember saying, well, neither did Margot Fonteyn, and that didn't keep her from being a prima ballerina. On the other hand, it was Switzerland, and that was the way it was. So I was talking to Sadie, and I said, well, and she still wanted to dance. That was her passion. I said, if you can't be a professional ballerina, what will you do? And she said, oh, well, then I'll be an astronaut. And I didn't laugh out loud at the time, but I certainly laughed afterward. And I thought, isn't that the brilliance and the wonder of youth? Little children who just believe everything's possible. And and that stays in my mind as a way that we should all be. We don't need to lose this. And some point along the way, we do lose it. At some point along the way, people tell us, oh, well, that's not possible, or, we're dreaming. As Thoreau said, we need to be dreaming, dream the big dreams. And so, how do we recover that passion, that fire in the belly, as Sam Keen called it in a book by that title, which seems now to be forever ago, but I remember at the time being really impressed by that book. So, so what is it that we have passion for, and what do we do about it? And I was thinking this morning about Ken Gordon, who was the spiritual director of Centers for Spiritual Living I think it was for 8 years, which is the term for somebody to hold that position. Ken is an amazing, amazing man, wonderful consciousness, wonderful speaker, great heart. And a few years ago, I remember him saying, that we don't just sit around and meditate and pray, but we must do that. But what we must do is become activists. It's time for us to take action and not just to be sitting, allowing things to just be the way they are. And of course, our prayers are powerful, really powerful. Collectively, when we are praying for the same thing, and when I'm saying for the same thing, when we are seeing it already done, the final result, when that's the mental image that we hold, then that's what starts to happen. And the image that came to me as I was speaking this morning was 2016, the day after the election in the United States, and women marching, the Women's March in Washington. And it brought back this, I mean, I can remember sitting watching this on television as women marched all over the world. It was the Women's March in Washington, but women and men with them marched all over the world. And the feeling of joy, the feeling of love in those marches. There's no violence. There was no desire to do anything that was going to hurt another person. And I remember watching in New York as the women were marching, and I mean, I don't remember how many, but I think there was something like worldwide, there were millions of women and some men who marched that day. But what really stood out for me in the New York March was there were police officers along the route, and they had megaphones, and they kept shouting, you know, "You're beautiful, keep on walking. You're beautiful, keep on walking." And I thought, you know, where are there marches and protests where police officers join in with that kind of chorus, "You're beautiful, keep on walking"? I remember that day feeling so much hope, feeling that this was the time that love would prevail. This was the time that anything that rose up unlike love was going to be healed. And again, it goes back to something Ken Gordon said to Carol Carnes at a Circle of Love conference many years ago. And he said, you know, we're not there yet. We haven't reached the critical mass. But one day we will, and there will be people marching in the street, and they will be marching for love. And that's when they will know us. You know, we're under the radar right now. A whole lot of people don't know who we are. But that day will come. And you know, people would turn on their television sets, and those of us who are marching for love will be doing that. And people will say, well, how did this happen? Where did it come from? Well, it's almost like it's an underground movement, although it's not. Everybody's welcome to join in. But the thing is that it's rising up. You know, when we see so much in the world that is going wrong, we know that it is coming up to be healed. And it's up to each one of us to take some kind of action to heal it, whether it's signing a petition, marching, whatever it happens to be, you know, and definitely praying and meditating. And we will know, the truth is within each one of us. We will know what it is that is ours to do. And I thought, this morning, there's no more precious time than this, right here, right now, for another renaissance. You know, another renaissance where we are working for human rights, where we are working for better education for our children, where we are working to see that there is no child that's going to school unfed. You know, that everybody has food and shelter. It almost sounds rote to say those things because we want all of those things for people everywhere. But right now, there are people who are suffering everywhere, people who weren't suffering until this recent rate of inflation that has kind of gone over the moon for a whole lot of us, where, you know, food that we used to buy, it's just impossible to buy now because of the prices that have, you know, where things have gone up. And so instead of sitting around moaning about how expensive everything is, how expensive gas is at the pump, instead to see ourselves, you know, enjoying all of these things and knowing that everything is possible and that we're not left out, that no one has to be left out, where we see that there is enough for everyone, and where we see that we ourselves are enough, just exactly the way we are, because we are all expressions of God. As I like to say, we're containers of God. You know, we have this physical form, but outside the form is our soul that is kind of poured into this body, and is our mind that knows everything, and that is always connected with the divine. The divine is always there. It's just that we forget about it, and we forget to consciously use it. And now is the time that we really need to use it. As what was coming up for me this morning was that I needed to say something about Roe versus Wade, that was turned over by the U.S. Supreme Court this past week, and how horrified I've been to watch the news about this. And I can remember when my daughters were younger asking me if ever I would consider having an abortion if I were pregnant. And I said, no, never. The thing is, I was an adopted child, and I don't know how much that affects my thinking. It could be that, where I knew that if ever I were in those circumstances that I would have the child, I wouldn't have an abortion. But, and this is big, I would defend to the death the right of any other woman to choose whichever way she was going to go with this, to have the child or to abort the child. I wouldn't for a minute sit back and say nothing. And I think maybe that's why I was prompted to say this today, because it certainly isn't anything that I would normally talk about. And it is political, and normally I don't get into political things. But what really stirred me was that I heard that Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, said that he was going to do everything he could for the next 43 years. And I don't know where the number 43 came from. But he was going to do everything he could for the next 43 years to make the lives of the Democrats miserable. It started with Roe versus Wade, and then he said it is going to go to same-sex marriage. They will ban same-sex marriage, and then they will make homosexuality a crime. And then they will make it a crime for people of mixed race to marry. Now, Clarence Thomas himself, he's an African American married to a white woman. But these were the words that he was speaking, and this is pretty scary stuff. I was absolutely appalled to think about this, because this is going so far backward. And it is time right here and right now for us to rise up, for us to pray, to meditate, to see a better world, to see people like Clarence Thomas and his cohorts marginalized, to see them quieted. It's terrifying to think that these people on the Supreme Court, these Republicans on the Supreme Court, could and would vote this way. To hear this coming out of anybody's mouth. It is time for us to sign petitions. I live in Canada. Some of you live in other places. But the thing is, we are all one. And to think that an 11-year-old girl who has been raped would be forced to carry a child through to term is beyond anything that I can believe. What that would do to her life, and what happens when women have babies that they cannot afford to feed. I mean, there already is a shortage of food in Canada, in the United States, largely because of the cost of food. Food banks are having more and more people go to them. This is not right. This is not who we are. This is not who we were born to be. And so this is the time. This is the time for us to stand up for who we are, to stand up for what we believe, to stand up for the truth, to stand up for what God teaches. We need to show our courage, and we need to be courageous. And that doesn't mean to do anything violent or to hurt anybody else. But what it means is that let's get clear with our God. Let's get clear about what's important to us, what is important to the human race. Not to go back to make other people inferior in some way, not to protect our children, not to protect the rights of humanity. This is serious stuff, really serious stuff. And it's really important that we not only know that we have this power within us and that we put it to use, and we let our voices be heard. We stand up for what we believe. Even if we're speaking to somebody who doesn't agree with us, that doesn't mean that we attack them. It means that we simply state our own truth. We let them think about another point of view. I happen to believe that the soul enters the body at birth. From spiritual books that I've read, from experiences that people have had, I believe that that's when the soul enters the body. And someone said to me this morning, I love that we can disagree. I think that the moment of conception is when the soul enters the body. And where I'm coming from is Uh, I think last week I spoke about Dr. Jill Bolton, who had a stroke and experienced everything at a molecular level, and experienced her soul being outside her body and having to, and she recognized her container. She recognized the physical container of Jill Bolton, and she pushed her soul into that body. And she said it hurt and it was noisy, but she managed, to push, and it was incredibly difficult to get it back into the body. And so it's stories like that, and in books that I've read where I think, well, at the moment of conception, there's only a molecule, to push the soul into. It wouldn't be possible to push a great big soul into that, in my mind. I mean, who knows? We don't know for sure. But and the fact is, no matter what we think about that, whenever we think that the soul enters the body, we need to understand what the rights are of the person who is having the baby and their freedom of choice. Not, again, to me, it is not a religious matter. It is not a matter of state. It's an individual right of a human being knowing whether or not they are able to care for a child. God knows there are a lot of children who are not being cared for right now in this world, and I don't think we need more of them. Again, I respect everybody's opinions. What I don't respect is the thought that the overturn of Roe versus Wade is now the beginning of other acts that are going to deny the freedom of people everywhere, the freedom to marry the people they love, the freedom to love whom they love, the freedom to marry a person of a different race if we so choose. This is serious stuff. We live in perilous times. And it is time for us to find that stillness inside ourselves. Be still and know that I am God. And in that place, harnessing that power for good. And again, for the highest and best for all humanity. Not directing our prayers, not making anybody wrong, not saying, well, that person's right and this person, or I'm right and you're wrong. It's not like that. It's about lifting ourselves up to be the highest and best we can be, and wanting that for every other soul on this planet. Now is the time, and we are the people. We may be flying under the radar, but it's time that we stand up straight and be counted. It's time that we work to protect those who are unprotected. It's time that we give voice to freedom, to love, to dignity. God knows there's not enough love in this world. This morning, the wonderful Connie LeBeau was our guest soloist, and the second song she sang was "What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love." And isn't that the truth? What the world needs now is love, sweet love. Let us harness the power, and let us get there, and let us give that love unconditionally to everyone. And as we do, we are raising the vibration. We are creating a better path for everyone. Please join me in knowing this and holding the vision in your hearts that all of us are treated with love and respect, with dignity, and that we have the freedom to choose what is right for ourselves. We're not going to dictate what's happening to everybody else. We're praying for their highest and best, and for freedom for ourselves to choose. God bless you all. I send you my love today. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd care to make a contribution to our center, please go to our website, cslvictoria.org, and there's a button there that says donate, and it will take you through to PayPal, but also you have the choice to donate by credit card or debit card if you're not part of PayPal. And we thank you for your contributions. They're what keep us going and help us to thrive. You can also send an e-transfer to donate@cslvictoria.org. That's donate@cslvictoria.org. But more than anything, I bless you for all you do. I bless you for who you be. I bless you for standing up for the truth in your lives, for being those beautiful expressions of God that you can be. That's what it's all about right here and right now. Let us create a new renaissance in our time. And so it is. See you soon. Bye for now.